Guys, Tennessee has made it illegal to lie and put a baby on somebody. Let's talk about it. This new law passed in September of this year makes it a crime to commit paternity fraud.
So it did pass in the House, but it's being stalled in the Senate, so it hasn't fully passed. We're hoping that it will.
Under the language of the law, you cannot lie about who the father of your child is if you knew or should have known that they weren't the father, and it was with the intent to deprive the actual father of his rights or so that you could get money.
Ooh, she added that word intent in there. Usually intent is not easy to prove. You have to have some kind of like text message or some kind of message of her talking to her friends saying, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna make him the father," like which is rare for a man to have.
Now, there's been a lot of celebration about this law and outcry that this should be spread nationwide, but I don't think that the impact of this law is going to be as widespread as some may hope. Intent can be extremely difficult to prove, and here there are two layers of intent that would have to be proven.
It's okay that these women, like the intent part doesn't get proven. It's more that protects the men. I think that's the more importance of this law or what's going on here. As long as they have the mandatory paternity test, at least these men aren't getting screwed over. I don't really care if, like, I do care that these women, get the consequences of their actions. But to me, it's a win because men are protected or being protected by it. So.
Now, I'm not saying that there aren't women who foolishly will say things like, I'm going to tell this person that they're the father so I can get child support. But I think that happens so few and far between that this impact is not going to be tremendous. I plan to follow these cases as they come about, so I'm curious to know what your thoughts are about this law.
I'm gonna follow her. Hopefully, we can keep an update on this. What's going on with this too?
You guys, Tennessee has made it.
If you falsely accuse a man of being your baby's daddy, it's called parentage fraud, and it's no joke. It's a new era. Ladies are legally free to be with whomever they feel free to be with. And for some women,
I think they've been legally free to do that for a very long time.
an honest mistake could be made. Just make sure you're sincere and you've done your homework. And if you're making a legal claim to force a resistant man to claim your child as his dependent, make sure you can back it up with the facts.
Oh, so the people that were trying to go on Maury and just like claiming men as the father and stuff, and just failed 10 times in a row, now is illegal in a sense, at least in some states. So it's moving in the right direction slowly.
If you fall,
and then you get women like this.
So we've all seen it, and today we're going to talk about it. Paternity fraud. So I wanted to talk about this because this seems to be the new buzzword that BMs are using to.
I didn't put any race on this. She put race on this. I don't think it's just black men that have an issue with this. I think it's men of all culture that have an issue with this. Maybe black men are speaking about it a little bit more because they're starting to see laws change, but it does affect black men greatly because more black women are mothers than there are black men. So it's easy for women to just accuse men of being their fathers.
To scream to the top of the world that women are deceiving men when it comes to the paternity of their children. So I looked into the actual data, and then of course, your girl is going to come with the receipts as well as provide context behind the stats that they regurgitate, but they never provide the context in which those stats were generated. So let's do it. So for starters, they seem to be getting that data from a 2010 research article. So the data is already coming out old.
Yeah, it is outdated, you're right. Because it's probably worse now. The promiscuity of women have gone up crazy. And these are men that were given the test. This isn't all men. This was just men that had something that came up, medical wise, health wise, whatever other reason wise, that the DNA test came up and it came out to be 30%, 33%. That's 1/3 of all men that took the test. How is that not women lying through their teeth on a mass scale? That's 33%. So every one woman out of 3 have lied about their children. That's of the men that have been tested. Now if we want to go through this nationwide, I can see it being very, very close to 45-50.
It said 30% of men are not the father. Paternity tests show a dramatic rise in the number of individuals seeking DNA and paternity testing. So I'm going to go ahead and jump to why people are getting these paternity tests and why it's coming out as 30%. So first of all, 30%
doesn't even go to the fact that it's 30% women are lying. She's just saying that, oh, it's lower now, so men are just fucking lying and, fucking trash because they fudge the numbers up to 45%. Okay.
is not even half. So less than half of these men, and this is all men, they didn't even...
It is not all men. Get your fucking data straight. It is only men that took paternity tests. How can you say all men? Because not every single man has taken a paternity test.
Break it down to black, white, Hispanic, Asian, none of that. This is 30% of all men that they're saying with this 30%, and they're acting like it's the worst thing in the world. So
30% is huge. Women have really no clue. I really wish that we can make it so women would need a paternity test to figure out if it's their baby or not. The idea can never cross their mind because it can't happen. Like, they know that it's their child, but yet they think it's not even an issue when 33% of men are not the child's father. You just think it's nothing, that like there's only a few women that are doing this.
It says this is an often misunderstood statistic provided by some paternity test labs regarding a percentage of paternity tests with a not the father result. Most paternity test labs report that about a third of their paternity tests have a negative result. Of all possible fathers who take a paternity test, about 32% are not the biological father. Here is the context that they miss out on. It says, but remember, this is 1/3 of men who have a reason to take the paternity test.
Yeah, no shit. So it's not all men, like we just fucking said. You just contradicted yourself by reading that stat. It's only the men that took the test. Yes, why? Because they needed to take the test for a particular reason. So they are still 33%. Imagine that men that have no clue what's going on, that think their wives are rainbows and sunshine, never cheat on me, she's my only one, I'm her only one. And then next thing you know, three children aren't yours.
So this stat does not include a third of all men. And that is the defining factor.
You're stupid. That's not how statistics work. This is 1/3 of all men that took the test. This doesn't mean that we didn't take 1/3 of all the other men. This statistic could be only 20-30% of men that took the test. And 30% of them got negative results. So it might be even huge if we took a sample size of all men. Right? You're right. These are men that needed a reason and had a reason to. There's plenty of men that don't have a reason to, that they really should have one,
that they insist on leaving out. So that is why anytime you see them talking about stats on here, it's important to do your own research, because that 30%.
I guess it's important to do your own research and just lie to yourself, because this is what people are doing. They're going through their own research and they're cherry picking their own information and reading it through their own interpretation of things, which I understand, but you're interpreting it wrong.
Percent comes from the amount of men who had a reason to take the paternity test, and it does not account for all men across the board.
Oh, now you're fucking lying. Like, now you say it doesn't account for all men across the board. You literally said it did earlier. So you don't even know how to read your own statistics.
So that's an extremely small pool that are saying 30% of the test came back as them not being a father.
Exactly. It is a very small pool and it's still a high percentage. This is the part where I don't think women understand statistics. So if you get a larger portion of the pool, the statistics might be even bigger.
So anytime you see a M on here, especially a BM, screaming to their top of their lungs and regurgitating statistics, make sure you look into the data yourself and find out the context behind these stats that they're quoting, because a lot of them just don't know how to read graphs and data.
I think you're one of those people. We've always been very direct saying that these are only of the men that took paternity tests, and it was 1/3. And we always say, imagine if all men took the paternity test. It would be skyrocketing. Because there's so many women that take this shit to the grave.
When it comes to 4-year-old
What a key.
Paris Morris, it has been determined by this court, Mr. Morris, you are not the father.
This man doesn't look happy. When we get shit
But
like
in
this,
just one day, 3 of them lost their father.
Go watch that video. If you don't want to watch it, in short, the guy was in Texas, married, divorced, 4 children. One of his children develops cystic fibrosis. They go on for DNA testing.
this would be one of the reasons. Something happens to the kid. Something happens to the father. Some kind of medical reason where they need to do it, like a blood test or some kind of DNA test or genes test.
Doctor says, you don't carry that gene. It's
Ooh.
impossible for this child to be yours. Man gets a DNA test for all his children, finds out he is not the father of 3 out of the 4 kids. Mind you, by this point, this man is divorced, child custody, and everything has been settled. He is paying child support of about $1,100 a month for those kids. He goes back to the courts and is like, these are not my children. I shouldn't have to pay for them. The courts are like, you didn't bring that up.
And fuck the courts, man. Like, really? Because I didn't bring it up earlier before the divorce? Like, how was I supposed to fucking know? This is why DNA test needs to be mandatory. Shit like this shouldn't even be happening. 33% of men that fucking something happens to them where they need to find out what the fuck's going on shouldn't be devastated at moments of their life where they're already at lows. Like, imagine you having cancer or your kid having cancer. Then you have to give them a liver. And you're the only one that can give him a liver. You try to give him a liver and he's not your kid. The devastation. The emotional damage.
Up during the divorce. I'm sure that's what they said. I'm not too sure of the law in Texas, but generally, like in California, a child born during a marriage is presumed to be a child of that marriage, meaning that the courts are not going to require you to prove that the children born during your marriage are biologically your children. They'll just assume that they are.
I mean, if the world was great and women weren't bad and men weren't bad, it would be a great assumption. It's a wonderful assumption. It really is. Maybe back in the day, maybe in the 50s and 60s, it was a good assumption. Nowadays, it's like the worst assumption you can make when it comes to relationships.
You basically have the burden of deciding to challenge that. And that usually has to be filed within a certain period. Usually,
I believe it's 2 years after the child is born. Well, at least in California.
before the divorce and everything is complete. So anyway, so he's trying to challenge the case. I'm not too familiar with how it works to challenge it after the fact, either in Texas or in California. But even worse, he told his children, you are not my kids. Then the court stripped him of physical custody or visitation because they said that's basically what they call parental alienation. So during divorces, the courts basically say you should not disparage the other parent or say things that will...
Which is so bullshit because the mom does that shit all the time. They do it like on a global basis, but yet nothing ever happens to them. But when a man says, hey, you're not my kids. Why? Because you're not my kids. It's the truth.
Emotionally damage your children. So that's probably where he got in trouble. So now this man, not only can he not see his kids, he has to pay child support for kids that are not even his kids.
Oh my God.
So why is this? The courts.
And the women earlier seems to think there's nothing wrong with this. That it's only a few women. Why are men like bitch batching about all this fucking fraternity fraud shit? Because men's lives get ruined, kids' lives get ruined, not just your life gets ruined. No, everybody's life around you just got ruined because of your fucking lies.
Are basically behind. The law is really behind in terms of reproductive technology and just technology in general. A lot of laws are outdated and antiquated. It used to be that it was very difficult for you to get DNA test, or it was very expensive and it wasn't reasonable. But now it's become more common and it's more easily available.
DNA tests are not that expensive now. What is it? Just a quick swab of your mouth, quick swab of the baby's mouth? It's quick. It's not that hard. It's not so invasive as it used to be.
The courts just haven't caught up. So going forward, I think in the future, what's going to have to happen is either they need to require DNA testing at the time birth certificates are issued, or at the very least, I personally would probably say to men, if I was a man and I'm getting divorced, I would probably just off the jump request DNA testing for the children.
Ooh, that's a good point, guys. If any of you guys are in for divorce or on the way to divorce, I hate to say it, you should probably get a DNA test with your kids if you have the kids. I know you probably don't want to hear that. It's probably not the greatest thing to be doing. You need to know
before the divorce and custody is settled. And that woman, I mean, it's bad enough you cheated on your husband. It's bad enough to have one child that's not your husband's child, but 3 out of the 4?
And there's worse. There's 4 out of 4 or 3 out of 3. And the man's been taking care of him like nothing. There's not even, none of them are his fucking seed.
Sis.
Paternity fraud is when a man is incorrectly identified as the biological father of a child. If you're not married and you have doubts that you're the father, make sure you do this. Do not sign the voluntary declaration of
These are you motherfuckers out there that be shooting loads in women and not fucking, paying attention. Read this shit.
Make sure you're not on the birth certificate. If the mother files and serves a petition, request a DNA test. If you are married and you have doubts, you have 2 years from the birth of the baby to challenge paternity. After that, you'll be deemed the legal father of the child, even if DNA tests reveal later that you're not the biological father.
Wrap it up, guys. Or at least don't shoot up the club. Pull the fuck out or something. God damn it.
And then you submitted to a second DNA test at the order of this court, correct?
Correct.
And what were the results of that DNA test?
Also, that one said there was a 0% chance that I was the father.
Okay. And after you learned that you weren't the child's biological father the first time, did you said you cut off all ties? You ceased exercising parenting time?
I did. I mean, they were already. I hadn't seen him because I was in jail, but I did. I had no more. I exercised no more parenting time with him from then on.
And so, when was the last time you had contact with the child?
That would have been 2019, around October 2019.
And approximately how old was the child at that time?
He had to have been 1 at the time.
And do you know how old he is now?
He has to be 5 now.
Okay. So do you believe it would be a fair statement that say you had a relationship with the child for only maybe a year, very early on in his life?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you believe the child is bonded with you?
No.
Do you have any sort of relationship at all?
Not at all.
Do you believe any type of harm could come to the child by revoking your paternity?
No, not even the support that I provide to Lisa, because she does. I mean, neither one of us have legal guardianship of him anymore.
Okay.
What? Neither you or the mom? Who the fuck has legal guardianship?
So, Your Honor, it's clear that no harm will come to the child if Mr. Brown's paternity is revoked. It's not against the child's best interest to revoke his paternity because the child most likely doesn't even know him. So Mr. Brown requests that his paternity be revoked, that the order of affiliation be set aside, that the uniform child support order be terminated back to the date
Oh, she's in jail. That makes sense.
of the filing of this motion, and that the parties take the necessary steps to remove his name from the child's birth certificate.
Okay. Ms. McCoy, you have an opportunity to question Mr. Brown, if you wish to do so, do you have any questions for Mr. Brown?
No, the whole point of, I know the whole point of this court date is to get, to terminate his child support order. So I just leave everything as is, and that's okay.
Okay.
The reason he was paying for it because this lady over here named him the father. That's why.
And Your Honor, we did provide a proposed order, I believe, to the court on July 19th.
And look at all the shit that a man has to go through after it's already been proven that it's not his kid to get rid of all of what's been put on him already.
Okay. Any other witnesses, Ms. Reiser?
No, Your Honor.
Yeah, he signed it thinking it was his.
Ms. McCoy, do you wish to testify?
No, sir. Regardless of,
Well, this judge is pissing me off already. She already said no. She had no last statements. No, nothing. Just fucking get on with it.
what was said, my argument it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? He deserves, to not pay child support anymore,
And she knows.
All right, so those of you who are in Tennessee, guess what? House Bill 2689 is getting ready to pass. That is requiring paternity tests before you sign the birth certificate. Because, when people do paternity tests, 1/3 of the time, they end up not being the father. And if they start testing everybody, that number can only go up, not down.
I agree.
It's going to be dramatic. And right now they're starting to also add in things like, maternity fraud is a crime and a punishable crime. So, guys...
As again, that maternity fraud thing is going to be very hard to punish these women just because then who's going to take care of the child? Because they don't know who the father is. If that man wasn't the father and they filed maternity fraud against that woman, she goes to jail. Who's taking care of the kid? It ain't the man because that's not his kids. Why would he want to take care of that kid? And those kids don't know who their father is. It's a fucking smorgasbord of fucking fucked up shit.
Used to go to jail for not paying child support on a child that wasn't theirs because the state wants to get their money, because if there is no father to pay for the child support, somebody has to pay for it, so they push it onto the nearest person that could be a father figure. And they're actually starting to jail time the ladies for maternity fraud because it is such a rampant crime.
What do you guys think about this? You think they'll actually pass it? And do you think at some point it's going to be nationwide?
All right, so those of you who are in...
I don't know if it's going to be nationwide. If it is going to be nationwide, it's going to take a while. Our government sucks. Everything moves at a snail's pace unless it's something major that puts money in the rich people's pockets. Then it gets passed instantly. If it's anything else, it takes fucking 10 to 12, I don't even know, 20 years to get something done in the Senate. Please subscribe down below. I really appreciate that. And I'll catch you guys next time. Ciao.